Finding, but people online can see you. Okay. All right. So Lance, tell us your story.
Tell me my story. Well, we just had a session, so I don't know how far you want me to go back, but I'll start. You're all from Kelowna area, so I'm actually graduated high school in Suyis. A lot of people ask me, how did I get into this career? I've been professionally making video games for 20 years now. So basically, I define professional as, you got made money. Amateur or indie would be maybe not making money. It was interesting in high school. I wanted to get into industrial design, which is I loved architecture. I loved industrial design. Industrial design is how do you use an object? So the design of a phone or design of an interface or design of a tool or something. How do you use things, create solutions that way? I couldn't get into the University of British Columbia. My grades were too low for French, English, etc. I learned later that I actually have some dyslexia. Reading has always been a struggle for me. So that was taken off the plate. I had a wonderful art teacher. He actually set me aside and actually made a separate class for me. And instead of just teaching art, I learned graphic design and graphic layout and typesetting and that industry. Did a lot of co-op programs throughout high school. Worked at sign companies, t-shirt companies, silk screening companies. And my first career was actually becoming a graphic designer and making t-shirts for tourism. And my whole career, I always had the word designer attached to the back of it. I was a t-shirt designer, graphic designer, got into marketing, got into web design, and then got into game design. And then this internet thing came out. I was really early on web design. Loved my passion of building worlds and making games. Learned this little program called Flash. I actually picked up the manual, read it from cover to cover to learn how to do it. I don't know why I can read manuals, but I can read manuals. Novels? No. Manuals, yes. Actually, Shakespeare's the only reason I passed English. For some reason, I can read Shakespeare. Everything else, no. Started building this little world you guys might know about, this little penguins that walked around. They were like a little club and they had some penguins. It was pretty cool. So 2000 started that, found some great partners and started putting together a team in 2005. Blaine Merrifield and Dave Crisco and the whole team. We launched Club Penguin in 2005. We sold it to the Walt Disney Company in 2007. By then we were nearing 300 people working for us. And I believe it was 2010 I left Disney and started Hyper Hippo. I think it was about 2 years later. I think it was 2012. And from then on, we've been building stuff. I've always been curious about making games, making products, learning things, learning design, reading the manuals, learning programs, the software programs. And built this big virtual world, decided, hey, let's get into mobile gaming. So we started learning mobile games so that now we have our hit products, Adventure Capitalist and Adventure Communist. Though with all the political ad blocking right now, we might rename it to Glorious Leader. So
You're getting filtered.
It's seen as a political advertisement.
So we've done this once before, so I'm going to just cast my mind up and just talk about some of the skills, the attitudes, the things that you had as a young person that have got you to where you are now.
The biggest skill is just I was curious, always curious. My mom actually had a doll making company. My dad wanted to build a toy making company. He's a financial planner. He loves the math and the game there. Maybe that's where the blend came in with the engineering and stuff. I just was always curious. I would make worlds, always. I didn't share this story upstairs. Some of the people are saying, what could a grade 9 or 10 student do? Just start making stuff, create stuff. My dad worked in a banking. I loved going to work with him at night. Because why? Because they had photocopiers. And I ran my comic book company when I was 9 or 10 years old. No, 12. I think I was 12. I was making comic books and distributing them and selling them. So I just have always been creating ventures, launching and creating product. I got into web design. I just loved it. I'm just always curious, always want to see what's next. Little extra stories. Like we had Amazon here 2 weeks ago, I guess, to talk about audio gaming and Alexa and everything. I'm just loving how the new stuff is coming out and just always learning it. Never a manual for any of this stuff. And there's no school that teaches it.
We didn't talk about this upstairs, but have you guys experienced what we can call as flow? And I'll give you a personal example. When I got my first Mac book and I found iMovie, and I could just take photos and music, and Mac was this tool to make like a really sweet 2-minute video. And then I was the guy at all the birthdays and the weddings that were always like, can you make one of those beautiful slideshow things? And then I got into iMovie, and iMovie was this great tool to make stories. But I would sit at iMovie, and then I would be there for like 6 hours, and I'd be like, blink. Oh, hey guys, can you guys relate with anything in your world that you've got into that state where time is standing still? You're in a creative zone. Okay. That's flow. That's flow. And if you don't know flow, you got to find your flow, because I think flow is where you go. I'm like a rapper now. Yeah.
Important.
Yeah. But like that curiosity, and then getting some kind of tool in a creative environment where you just time melts. Does that happen before?
Oh, big time. Let Sam jump in too, but the biggest encouragement I can give you is flow. Oh, lately I don't get it as much, but I'm fully aware what it is. I find that you get flow through habits, and you gotta form routines and habits to make flow happen. For building Club Penguin, I took every Wednesday night I worked on it, every Friday I worked on it, and every Saturday I worked on it. And then eventually, when I partnered with Lane and Dave, then I worked 5 days a week full time as we built out the company to work on it. But you have to plan and schedule these things, or you're never going to be able to create anything. That's what I found. And you can't be. The next step is don't be hard on yourself. I think there's a book about artists and their habits. I think it's Grisham, who's the lawyer writer?
Grisham.
He has this habit where he sits down, makes a coffee, sits down a piece of paper, pen and paper every morning. I think it's 9 a.m. or something. He has this set routine. Doesn't matter where he is on the planet. And his rule is he must write a sentence. And then he must sit at his desk. I think it's for 20 minutes. And if nothing happens, if he's not inspired, he's just banging his head against the wall, nothing's working, he goes about his day and goes to meetings and does everything. If flow begins, he's into it. The day is canceled, he just goes. He writes. Every single person that has a meeting with him gets canceled. He goes. But he will tell you over and over, it's not because he can get into flow or anything. It's because he has a routine to give permission to let the flow happen. And you have to build those routines in.
Another great TED talk I watched is we all think about this thing about genius, right? Oh, and there's certain genius, boy genius, girl genius, whatever. But same to that point is genius in the Roman times was this thing, and we have genius in this room right now. And genius will come sit on your shoulder, and then you're the conduit to just getting that thing out. And it was Elizabeth Gilbert who wrote Eat, Pray, Love. She did this thing where, as a writer, she just had to sit down and show up, and then genius would come and then would go through. So if you don't show up to your computer to write, or you don't show up to your computer to do code, or you don't show up to do your animations, you have to do that. That's that structure and creativity, and it manifests.
Yeah, it's one of those biggest challenges. Like for me, and part of my role in the creative industries is just like, okay, how do we take people who have amazing abilities and allow them to flourish and unleash that talent and get it out? I am not that amazing unleashable talent of I'm going to be the drawer or the game designer or those type of things, but I get to work.
Amazing legal agreements.
Oh, thank you very much.
He knows his way around a legal agreement.
Well, that'll get you excited.
Beautiful pieces of
Yeah.
art.
And they're necessary. And that's where my flow comes, is that I'm able to kind of take a look at how people, like when you see people who just go, they think they can jump 3 feet high and they jump 8. And you just said, wow, that was amazing. Nobody expected that to happen, did they? Well, that was pretty cool to be a part of that. So I have a different role in that. But one of the biggest challenges is in that role for me personally anyway, is we're in the creative industries. And so that's whether it's your art or your programming or the way that you talk to people or the way that you communicate. And so we're asking for creativity. And then we say, be creative, but do it within this structure. And then it's trying to define what that structure is. And one of the biggest challenges that we find and observe in our industry and in probably just about anywhere, it's probably in school, you probably see it in school too, is there's a structure. You got a class structure. You got to be in classes at these times. You got to do all these type of things. And how do you, can you please be creative between 9 and 10:30 every day?
The
That's
factory, right? The
Yeah.
factory model.
Yeah. And by the way, and if you're going to go into an animation studio or a game studio, please be creative for 8 hours. And just be creative during those 8 hours and then go home and do your other stuff. That just doesn't happen. That's not who we are as people. We just aren't built that way. So how do we get that structure, that balance of what the structure is that you should work on? And that's a little bit of what Lance is saying, is there is a discipline, which is different than a structure. Discipline is different than a structure. And so if you can figure out for yourself what that discipline is, Grisham maybe works great at 9 a.m. My son in grade 10, his best time is not at 9 a.m.
No, 9 p.m.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's when I would say sit down with your piece of paper and do your creative, because yours might be different. But at some point in the period, my natural flow goes into the music world. That's more where I am from that aspect. So you get me on the drum set, I'll be gone for 6 hours and I can just flow. And so I experience it in that type of format. But there's days when you don't feel like going and playing, those are the days you still have to go and play. If you're going to be a hockey player or you're going to be a basketball player, you got to go out. And if you want to be really great at basketball, you have to shoot 300 shots a day. And if you don't, well, you're up against people who are, and they have the discipline that are going to be willing to do that. So what are you going to do? Are you going to have the discipline that goes along with that? Whether you do that at 9 a.m. or 9 p.m. or wherever the case, but finding out how to have that discipline in your life is something that I think would be amazing, rewarding if you could do that sooner.
Okay, we're going from the genius to the genius, and the genius is not my idea. It's if you look back at some of the greater sort of Renaissance periods or creative periods in human history, it's when there's been the right combination of things to happen, like in Florence when Da Vinci and Leonardo, all these different artists sort of fostered out of Florence. And we have kind of a genius thing going on here in Kelowna. Do you want to let him in on the secrets?
Oh yeah, Kelowna is an amazing little city. What you're going to find though, looking around, is when you look out for the large employers, you're not going to see them. You're going to see Interior Health. You're going to see the school district. You're going to see maybe Kelowna Flightcraft or some of the largest employers here in town. Kelowna has this unique blend of a lot of people actually work remote. So they're very hidden, very tucked away. Hidden within Kelowna is actually some of the voice talent behind The Simpsons, writers for various Netflix shows. The lady, her name's escaping me, but she's the lead artist for all DC Comics Batman. She does it all from here. This talent's all around, and there's tons of them. So you got to get out and you got to find these people. They're always at the Comic Cons, the game jams, wherever they are. You'd be amazed at what's around here. I think you shared in the last meeting, and I've heard it before too. Kelowna has the most millionaires per capita in Canada. This is where people come. They want to have their not retirement, but
They want to ski. They want to
ski. I ski. That's why I'm
wakeboard.
here. But they're all hidden. But this city's full of so much amazing talent. It's just tricky to find them. So you got to be a little bit more proactive and get out there and start knocking on some desks. Like if you're at any of the Comic Cons here, just ask the artist, where are you from? You'd be blown away. And then ask, what do you work on? You'll find that they're like, I think you guys met with the Yeti Farm team and stuff. Unbelievable. Do you know what shows those guys do? There's some other than, like the rabbit one. Oh, whatever. But my daughter was obsessed with it. The amazing stuff out here. These people they're all gathered here in Kelowna. It's just, wow.
So one skill that we're trying to just give you transferable skills that you guys are already in the, like Mr. Raffi, can never say his last name, Raffi and Mr. Major's class, like they're giving you the skills. You guys are ahead of the game in terms of like coding and animating, those skills. But then there's these other skills that get you kind of that next level. And the one is networking. So right now you guys are building your posse in these classes. Stay together, like remember each other's names. And then another skill is to get out there and sort of find those next level networks. And that's what a lot of these kind of events, and then getting into spaces like this, finding that next level. But talk about teamwork and building stuff as a team. What are some of the things?
Well, just some of the stuff that flashes through my mind when you say things like that. When you think about, it was Bryn and Sergey who got together. And Bryn and Sergey, they were classmates. They were just buddies. didn't really get along well. They thought that they were a little bit arrogant, but they liked each other's skills. But they got together, and they came up with this thing in a garage called Google.
They made a little search engine.
So they came up with that. You know, Jobs and Wozniak, where did they meet? In the neighborhood. In their
He had Atari, I thought.
No, it was in their neighborhood.
Oh yeah, they knew each other before.
Yeah,
Right.
they knew each other. Like they grew up in the neighborhood. I mean, what are the odds of that? I mean, Hewlett and Packard. I mean, you just go on. There's list. So sometimes the person next to you, don't underestimate them. And even if you don't like the person right now, that might change over time. I mean, it's just amazing. And so then if we, as the older people on the stage, can figure out how to create environments in a way so that it allows you, so that when you got that idea that you can fly with it and you want to fly with it and you know where to go to, that's what should get us jazzed, is to help you do what it is that you want to do. And I don't know what it's going to be, because nobody knew what a search engine was when they came up with Google. Nobody knew what a micro
Even knew what the word was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Let's get some feedback from you guys. So hands up if you're in. So there's multiple classes here. Or 2, 3 classes? 2. Okay. So animation class, 2D, 3D. Okay. Okay. And then Rafi, what's your class? Video game design, development. And then what's your class? Okay. So what do you guys want to know? Do you want to ask these are freaking wizards of the video game industry? Yeah. Okay, let's talk about video games in the world and tapping into that.
great question.
So you just like
The question,
define your word network. You just want to meet them or work with them.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Right. I don't know if it's a benefit for the streamers, but the question is, how can you best get connected, whether it be locally or even outside of our area, with studios, and particularly into the video game industry? And so that's it's a great question. What surprises me, even though I talked earlier about how big this industry is from a dollar, you know, all these type of things, it's a surprisingly small industry as far as a network. Like as far as the actual network, like when we go and we meet with these big companies, there's this strange things that happen. One of them is you find out they're actually people, and you take away the company name and you start to realize that these people are actually people, and they actually have interests, and they actually care about what they do, and they don't always have all the answers, and sometimes they're looking for answers, and sometimes their job depends on finding an answer. So I think it's a good realization to understand that you're a person, here's a person. How am I going to connect with this other person? How am I going to connect with these people? And what are their interests, and what are they interested in? And when you start talking with somebody who has an interest that's common to your interest, it's amazing. Like, just imagine you fall beside this person on an airplane. And what do? Oh, I do this. Really? Oh, you know what? I love this. Oh, really? That's so cool. Let's talk more. And so the greatest connections often end up being just conversations that started at some point in time. And so what you need to do is you need to figure out where you're going to get connected, because most of the times those best conversations are not going to happen by going to their website and seeing where they have a job posting and you're applying for that particular job. Because that's where the mass goes, and that's not what I would call connection. What I would call connection is when you go to a game conference and you're sitting there and you're listening to people speak, and they actually said something up on the platform that was of interest to you, and you go up afterwards and you talk to that person. Listen, I really found that interesting what you just said. What does that mean? Because that's something that relates to what I'm trying to do. And the person who's there on the platform trying to talk actually wants you to talk to them, because that's why they're there. And so it's kind of like, that's just a really small thing. It's when you go to that game conference and you sit down at the lunch, you don't grab your lunch and go sit in the corner and talk to your buddy back in Kelowna. You go to the game conference, you get your lunch, and you go find the people who are sort of in that area that you know that it is. Hey, can I join? Love to talk to you. Love to learn more about what it is. And then you start to find out that these people are really people. And then you find out that the people who work at Microsoft, some of them graduated from a high school just like yours, and you find out that they play games just like you play, and that they're at a strategy and you're actually at a higher level than they are. And it's like, oh, okay. And then you start to build connection. So that would be one of the things that I would do, is start to reach out, because once you start doing that, there's games conferences that happen in Seattle. We'd love to do one in Kelowna. We'd love to see more happen. They are around the world, but when you do those type of things and you make those person contacts, all of a sudden, rapid fire, you're going to get connected with people on places like, there's things like LinkedIn, which, there's lots of social media out there, but LinkedIn is one of those places where it tends to be the industry people. So set up your LinkedIn profile and start to connect with people around that way.
Do you guys want to know about jobs? How to get jobs? What experience you need? Chris, yeah? The question for the streamers: what are the skill sets to get into video game development?
So there's a lot of common things. So industry-wide, if you're in the programming side, you'll have the best performance if you understand a program. A lot of it's just skills, right? I know how to use Unity, or I know how to program in C#, or I know systems or databases or whatever. The key here, I can encourage everyone, first and foremost, the number one thing to do is start making games and keep building games. Whatever you know today, if you just write, if you know how to open Google Documents, I don't care what it is, pick one. You can compose music, sound, draw, illustrate, program, code, anything. Pick something and start working on it. Because most of these companies, the first thing they're going to ask you is, what have you made? And by the way, you're going to judge yourself and going, well, I haven't done anything successful. It doesn't matter, because they're sitting there going, we're successful. That's why you're applying. So, but they want to know that you're doing stuff. You're learning and you're curious and you're constantly doing stuff. If you're going to get into, let's say, programming in Unity, keep learning Unity. Go read their tutorials. They're constantly updated weekly. Keep learning skills. Keep learning how to do things. Keep showing that you can do things. Industry-wide, though, the common ones are, if you're in programming, know Unity. There are some shops that do a lot of the Unreal, but Unity tends to be the leader right now. The art-wise, if you're an artist or anything, the truth of the matter is you need to be able to draw, and you need to be able to draw all the time. When we look at it's all about your portfolio and your recent work. I need to see volume, speed, and quality. And these artists that I work with, they'll draw hundreds of images to practice every single day. They sketch, they doodle, it's nonstop. They're not working on one piece. The piece with art you want to know is, can that artist deliver? And I will always ask when I look at a piece of art, I'm like, that's beautiful. How long did it take? And they'll go, well, it took me a month. I'm like, okay, well, I need that in like a day, because we need to do 5,000 characters for our game, not one. That's art. A little hard truth. If you're in the music side or audio side, generally the industry has now moved to that as an outsourced contract position, due to that most games tend not to have, if a development is 18 months or over a year, you're not going to have the musician in for the whole year. We usually bring in the musician. If you're in that industry, the audio sound industry, and a lot of art, by the way, is starting to move this way, you're going to be working with many studios. So you want to be very much in the networking side, saying, here's my thing, here's my last project, here's the audio I did, here's some score, here's some samples of the new game I heard you're working on, what I think would be good. They get out there and they start selling. But most of the musicians and stuff I know work for many studios, not for one. Producers is a strong skill usually needed. Producer is someone that can basically project manage, organize the teams. At the end of the day, video games is an interesting form. We're not film. Film tends to be a lot of artists. Gaming is this engineering meets art. So it's like this collision course of cats all screaming. Really, it's the producer that makes it happen. And it's wild, the meetings. Like literally, the user experience, the UX designer or something will say, the game doesn't feel right. And the engineer's mad as can be, going, how can it feel? I write code. It does what it does. What do you mean feel? Anyway, the producer has to bridge that gap. UX and UI are very in-demand skills. The UX is the experience through the game, and a lot of that comes from, that's not the drawing of the buttons. UX is the understanding how someone's motivated or flowing through a design. And then the UI is the layout and visual cosmetics of the design. Those are in demand. Right now, the hottest jobs are actually data science and data analytics, like looking at our games and giving us feedback. And there's many other skills that go along, but those are the big anchors in the industry. You'll also start finding, I was encouraging the earlier group, don't like, you would be amazed in video game industry how important marketing is. It's actually more than probably half the project. A lot of people talk about you've built the game. The joke is welcome to the starting line. Now the work starts. And marketing, sales, and everything is really hard. That is becoming an incredibly in-demand industry due to how advertising now works. It's targeted. So we need more creatives so that the AI can target. And you'd be amazed how many, like, I'm surprised we haven't actually posted, but we would like to hire people that are really good at writing memes. Like, that is now a profession. And I'm not talking one person in the studio. I would like 4 or 5 meme writers. Okay. We need, as a studio, we need about 100 pieces of creative per day to advertise our games per day. That's a lot. And one person's not going to make the 100. So that side of the industry is just exploding. We need so much talent over there. That's people that can mix little videos, make TikToks, show me that you can keep producing content.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the eyeball economy, right? Everything now is just, we're all competing for eyeballs and attention, right? You guys are consumers of it all the time. If you're watching YouTube or TikTok or Twitch, that's yeah. So you guys, if you guys are the consumers of it,
Mixer.
Yeah, I'm not in that realm. I'm showing my gray beard. But if you're the consumers of it, can you sell it? And that's where I know that this is not the other portfolio I do is iGen, which is build. You guys have, so did they get to build a video game by the end of their time? Like as a team or individually? Both. Yeah. So great. You've done that hard work. Is there someone on your team that can sell it? And I'll give you a good example from iGen. We had a design team that designed shirts for Dracula at OKM. And there was 3 people on the team. The one person was the designer. The other person was production. And then the third person didn't have value, they thought. And they wanted to split up the team. And I'm like, because Nikita wasn't pulling her weight. Well, they went to the theater. They went to Dracula the night. They only had 3 nights to sell. And the 2 designers and stuff were there with the little box and the money and the shirts. And they sat there. And then Nikita went over and said, she got out of their chair, went over and said, so who are you here to see tonight? And the grandma's like, oh, well, Joey's in the show. Well, did you want to get Joey a commemorative t-shirt? So without that salesperson, all of the work was for nothing. So you need someone that can sell. So if that's a skill.
And I would add on to the skill side as well as, there's kind of a spectrum between when you're in the large studio and when you're in a small studio. When you're in a large studio, you go to EA or something that's large, in that type of a thing. You're probably going to be working on one specific thing, and you're going to be a real expert at that type of area.
I know the guy that does the signs in FIFA World Cup. Go team.
And that's all they do all
he does.
day is like, I know people who do the uniforms in NHL and they just draw uniforms all day. And because there's uniforms changing all the time in NHL, that's all they do every day is they do that. So in a large studio of that type of environment versus you go to a smaller studio, we'd be a smaller to mid-sized studio. And you find people who have sort of a multi-skill set, multi-hats. When you go to our studio and play our game like Adventure Capitalist, everything that's in Adventure Capitalist, we did it at our studio. All the art, all the writing, all the programming, all the music, everything was done in the studio. And so it was one of the person who wrote the song and the music wasn't hired as a music person. They just happened to do other types of jobs and they did the music for it. So you sometimes have that crossover. So having the skills that can cross over can be utilized more in a smaller studio if you want to go on that type of thing. But the thing that you have to have regardless, I think, of whether you're in the large studio or the smaller studio is you have to have the ability to be able to work together with a team. And that is a skill set. And if you're and you need to treat it as a skill set of something that you're learning and always learning, because you always have to get along with people. And if you come into our studio, you're going to be evaluated by the team, because our team does the evaluation of people that come and join the team. It's going to be evaluated on the team of like, can you do your job? Can you actually draw? Can you actually program? Can you actually, whatever it might be that you do? That is probably 25% of the evaluation. The rest of the evaluation is going to be, could I work with this person? Would I want to sit beside this person for 8 hours or 12 hours a day if I had to?
It's
And
the fit, right?
yeah,
The
there's
cultural
that fit, and you have to be able to know how to communicate with people, how to deal with that. And that doesn't mean you have to be somebody different than who you are, because we have the best of the nerds who are quiet at their computer, but they know how to communicate and work together as a team, and they're willing to work as a team. They're not going to go sit by themselves and this is my project and I'm going to code the way I want to code. I don't care what everybody else does. I'm just going to code my way. If you see a glimpse of that type of attitude, boom, that person's not going to be a part of the studio. So those are the type of things that you have to think. That's a skill as much as anything, is being able to work together with your colleagues, because that's usually where the creative genius comes through, is in that greater team.
Let's talk about imagination. And I know when we went to Hyper Hippo 3 years ago, you were talking about VR games. And now, where's the future of gaming? Where can these kids let their imagination go? If you were to, for the next 3-4 years, to just go on something, where do they go?
Just so you know, Lance's full-time title is Chief Innovation Officer.
Yeah, this is your dream. This is your dream question, Lance.
This is the
go.
soft
Where do you want to go?
Well, I'm actually quite nervous to do it because I'm setting your guys' hopes up too much. Where's gaming industry going? This is my opinion of what I'm seeing going on. You've already heard announcements from PlayStation, Xbox. These are the last generation of consoles. This is it. This is done. We're moving to, people have to break. You have to break your thought. You have to understand that you now carry a screen. Don't think of it as mobile. Don't think of it as phones. You carry a screen. When you start getting into augmented reality and audio, it's believed that once audio really takes off and augmented reality really takes off. So Apple's got some new glasses coming out soon. You can go read about their next announcements, probably next fall. It's believed that probably half the people that are already carrying a phone will stop carrying a phone. So you're already because you have to think about what you do on your phone. Most of it's actually notifications, getting updates, and checking things. That'll be done with AR, and audio will take it over. Audio is your majority of your time. We've been asked, who's Nissan? Nissan asked Hyper Hippo and has been asking game studios. They've been asking a lot of video game studios, help us, because they're thinking about, what does it mean when cars drive by themselves? What do the people do? What are you gonna do in a car?
Play vids while you drive.
So all these car companies are asking video game designers to come up with entertainment to do in a car. VR is still ways out. If you know any friend that spends at least an hour a week in a VR, once that day happens, you start to know that it's going to become commonplace. Right now, it's not commonplace. My gut is on what's called frictionless gaming, which is Stadia. I think it was poorly launched, but the idea of games anywhere on a screen is going to be world dominant. That takes over everything. If my background's design, if you guys study design, you'll learn that removing friction always wins. So removing friction, and what Stadia has announced is going to be the winning condition. Will it be Stadia? Don't know. The idea of playing anywhere on anything, yes. Audio is going to come in big, and AR is going to be really big. You can see Pokemon Go and all them really going there. And those are going to be where your futures are if you're going to start experimenting. Right now, there's no money path on any of those. But whoever figures out first.
Yeah. There was no money path for Club Penguin when you started.
Money path.
No.
This is useless. Nobody would ever play a game in a web browser. Kids especially, no kid will ever play.
Yeah. What do you mean by audio? Because I'm a newbie. It's just like
both Amazon and Google are quadrupling billions of dollars down on their Alexa audio and the Google Assistant audio gaming right now. You'd be blown away what's going on in those things, like D&D, Dungeons and Dragons, playing with friends, audio over, commuting in your car and playing a session, a game, back and forth, audio casts, game shows, trivia, Jeopardy is being played as people commute in their cars. You're actually a contestant in the game against other multiplayer contestants. I even got told the new battleship's coming, which I thought was like ridiculous. I was like, B4. They're trying to solve how are we going to play games in audio. If you actually look at a person's day, the attention, the time for attention, and the moments you still have time to interact with someone, audio is the remaining portion, and it's actually a large amount of time.
There was another streaming. Do you remember Van Brumlin? She was an audio engineer, or she was an engineer at MIT, and she's trying to make coding with just using audio. So you can code with just your voice, like
Amazing
packets,
stuff
boom, boom,
coming.
boom, boom. She's a local girl. You guys ran another session with her. She's amazing. So she went into engineering and then went to MIT, and she's now working on making coding with just your voice, just that scripting that you talk about, but you can just do it with your voice.
And those companies are putting big, they want developers to start building. They see it as the next big thing. And I agree. If as you guys leave high school and you're more in a career professional, if you've really dove into your audio assistants in your phone, like I answer almost all my Twitter and everything now with audio assistants, I don't care to type anymore. It allows me to go hiking and skiing. I'm just on the ski hill. Say this, and I'm skiing. And I'm answering my 100 support tickets. Audio is becoming really big.
More questions from the floor. We've talked a lot. Yeah, in the back. I'll restate the question for the people that are not here. How do you see games as a service going?
Well, so I don't know why you're asking the question. Games as a product is dead. Period. Full stop. Most of the industry is abandoning that. It's games as a service has been changed to a word called live opping or live op games. Games that ship and then continually grow is where primarily all the money in the entire market right now is. If you're not producing a game with live servicing, or you mean more like subscription, or the industry has moved to the word of live subscription. That's gone. It's almost nobody doing it. The revenues and stuff, there's the last tail end of the console teams doing it. Even the consoles are abandoning that model. They're all moving to subscription. They're all moving to constant content. You're moving to this new Disney Plus, Netflix, everything, just subscription over product and content over time. That model is moved away. Might get 1 or 2 hits. Like you're spending more than $60. Like people go, here's a project, okay? Please, because it's hidden. The number's hidden. Please go open a Google Sheets document. I want you to make a spreadsheet on Fortnite items and dances, okay? How many V-Bucks they are, what the cost is to buy the V-Bucks. I think you'll be horrified to learn that an outfit starts at, and by the way, there's only 3 levels. There's the common, rare, and whatever, the 3. Spread it on the spreadsheet. The lowest item of an item is $14.50 in Fortnite. It's not $1. And you will be absolutely horrified to learn how much you pay for the dance emojis. Go do a spreadsheet. Go do it. And then go figure out what the average player probably does. Yeah, it's not $60 anymore. Fortnite can make way more than $60.
More questions? We got 10 minutes.
It's a good question in the sense of if you want to talk about the business aspect, if you're curious at all about the business aspect of video game development, because when you're evaluating your game, whether to continue on the game, you're always going to look at what the lifetime value is of your player base. What are, is it, if my lifetime value of in my game is $2 and it's going to cost me $5 to get players to play my game through marketing or advertising or any of those type of things, you're going to quickly understand that I'm paying $5 to get $2. I don't have a long-term plan on this game. I'm done. And so then you're kind of like, okay, so then I have to go. In what they found in the product plan was it's going to cost me $60 to get I'm going to get $60 when I sell the game. Well, that sounds like a lot of money. And then you have to pay so much of that to the store. You have to pay 30% to the store. You have to do, all the signs on the buses and subways, and then you got to do all the trailers that show up at Super Bowl, and you do all those type of things, and you find out in the end that $60 wasn't a lot of money. And it's kind of like, okay, out of that $60, I might get a buck or two. Ooh, okay, this is getting a little tougher. And what if it doesn't sell that number of units that I thought it was going to sell? So the cost of marketing the game is getting higher and higher, and it's getting more and more competitive. So the way that the game industry is looking at it is saying, lifetime. What's the lifetime value of this game? And the longer you can prolong the life of a player's activity within the game, the more likelihood you've created value to that player. And if you've created more value to that player, you're then going to create the opportunity for them to support your game through in-app purchases or advertisements or some other type of form. Buy a t-shirt, who knows, whatever that might be. So when you have a game that's been around for 5 or 10 years, that's very hard to do. But if you've been able to get a little bit of money every time as you go through that, you're looking at your lifetime value. And if your lifetime value all of a sudden went to $10, because over the 2 years you're going to come up to $10 versus what have been $2 if it had been just a short experience, what did it take me to do that? It still cost me the same amount of money to get that first player at $5. If I'm using the same model, it still cost me $5 to get that player. But because I kept that player for 2 years, now they've paid $10 in that game over that period of time. Okay, now I have a sustainable business, and that's good. So how am I going to do that? I'm going to continue to update the game and keep them involved and do that. Because if I don't, they're going to go play somebody else's game.
We have a couple minutes till pizza. Pizza. There's cheese and tomato sauce right behind you. I thought that might wake up a few of the guys that are just like, okay. When you talk about an ideal customer, hands up, are you your own ideal customer? AKA, when you're building a game, are you building it for you to play? This is a question for you guys. Do you talk about that? Do you talk about the end? You might want to sell it or move it on to someone? No? Yeah? So that's one of the driving forces behind what you play. But where are you selling most of your games? Who are your ideal customers in this day and age?
Today, we're actually just selling in North American stuff, but there's a game industry, video game industry. Your primary audiences are in the India, China, Asia markets, are the largest. China now, I believe in the reports, is now generating more income than the US's market for gaming. So US is not the lead. I was sharing earlier this morning, like you have to understand the customer. So simple little aha moment. Why is there less future for console games than mobile games? So that question's always up. People always argue mobile, whatever, blah, blah, blah. Simple fact is this. In China and India, if you're 20 something right now, and you have a job and a career, when you go buy your house or condo, this is common. This is it. This is what they build. There are no living rooms in these houses. Where would you put your TV? Where would you put a console? They'll also tell you they're never home. They commute once. That's the home where they might one day raise their kids. They also, these Chinese people we've met and different things, they rent these bunk beds in places that are closer to their office. So they have less commuting time. There is not a home theater console culture. That doesn't exist. So when that's removed, they can't even comprehend, why would you buy a console? Why would I haul it around? That's their mind. So they're more in depth with the mobile and stuff like that. And then when you break down the markets and stuff, that is our majority of the player base. Europe is similar. It's not a living room culture. That was a very American culture, not a global attitude of how things are. Even in the new apartments coming in here, a lot of them don't really have living rooms.
If I remember China's stats, and I may be off on this, but if I remember it was something like there's 500,000 consoles in the China market versus 900 million smartphones.
So that's going to take us to any other questions. Just a small plug. I know Sam's a member and I'm coming. I keep threatening.
Mhm.
If you want to learn another language, I would learn Mandarin. Any Mandarin speakers? No? There's Mandarin Mondays at the library. And that is an amazing skill. If you learn coding and Mandarin, you can basically write yourself a ticket.
We have a friend, just to add to that story a little bit, who came from China, one of the largest game groups in the world. We're having pizza down at Famosa here in Kelowna, and he's meeting with my family, and it was a nice visit. And my son is a Fortnite and Rocket League and console player. But anyway, so he's like, okay, so what do you want to do, Daniel? And he says, well, is this an industry you're interested in? And well, it sounds interesting. He says, well, let me tell you something. I'm looking for somebody who can help us with our business. And then you'd be traveling around the world, working with all the best game studios in the world. And you would be looking for new games. And he went on to describe the job. It was a pretty cool job. And Daniel's like, wow, that's really a cool job. That'd be really fun. You make a lot of money and you travel around the world and you visit with all the best game studios. Okay, I need 3 things. This is what I need from you to get the job. He said, I need you to understand games. Oh yeah, that's easy. I like games. Okay. I need you to speak English. Oh, I'm doing pretty good. I can speak English. And I need you to speak Mandarin. Oh. So Daniel's been at Mandarin Monday with me every Monday because that's just one thing. That was just 3 job requirements. And there's more people who speak Mandarin in the world than any other language. So just to put that global perspective on things, that was an interesting thing. So just sharing that little story.
Any other last words of wisdom? I can feel the energy in the room. We're kind of low. We've got 5 more minutes, boys. Any ladies, any questions?
Be curious. And then to follow up with Sam, little factual. Go Google what the top 10 game studios in the entire world are. Don't keep looking at this EA stuff and Blizzard. Don't look at that. Look at the top 10 game studios in the world. You're going to see Tencent, Sony, NetEase. There's almost nothing in the North America. Well, they start. I think North America is like 5th. One of them. I think it's EA.
Mm-hmm. Blizzard.
But they're big.
Yeah, it's a big industry. And it's an industry that is ripe for change. And one of the biggest changes that I think will come out of our industry is when the female designers and the female marketers and things like that start to take hold, because I think that's one of the things we're missing big in our industry. And so I see
I really wanted to drive that one home. This is a sad stat. Sorry, take an extra moment. Anybody listening too. The number of women in the video game industry has actually declined, not gone up. It's gone down, which is bad. The number of people just in Canada, okay, so the latest Canadian video game report and electronics report, that identify themselves as a gamer, okay, which is almost the entire population of Canada. It's like 49% women to men. Yet the people making games, and I'm talking a tiny number here of women in this industry, is declining. And that is just that. I think that's terrible. When half our audience is women, they want to play, they identify themselves as a gamer. It's not even like I want to or I'm interested. I am a gamer. Make games. And there's almost no women in the industry. It's like, I want to say it's like a nice number. It's not. It's terrible.
So that will be one of the biggest changes in the next 5 years.
Yeah. Question in the back. Question is, where do you train or get the training, and where do you hire from?
For the majority of jobs, the schools are behind. So it's great. Go to school, meet friends, have things, learn the discipline, get the skills. But even Google and them will tell you right now, they're not hiring anyone for artificial intelligence from university stuff. The universities are teaching what they're learning now. So it's similar in gaming. I want to look at what you're doing. if you went to any university or college, like Vancouver Film School and stuff's great because at least you're building projects. I'm going to look at your project, not your, most of them are behind. They're already behind. I need to know that you have the skills. Did you work well on a team? And did you make something? The worst you could do is go for 5 years, get yourself a computer degree or something, show up at my door and say, look at me, I got a certificate. And then I'm going to ask you the very first question. What game did you make in the last couple months? Not even years ago, months. What did you build now? And you don't show me anything?
This
you
gets
have to
back
be
to
making something.
a little bit to that structure question that, earlier. And I think the educators have a tremendous challenge because we're in an industry, whether it's video games or others, where technology is changing so fast. So I would hate to be in the position where I was an educator trying to create a curriculum to try to teach people for the future. And that's what the education system is trying to tackle, I guess, in some respects. And that's a horrible thing. That's momentous because it's changing so fast. I can teach you what it is today. I can teach you what it was yesterday, but how am I supposed to teach you what it is in the future? You have to, who's a futurist? So you have to get in some sort of flow or way of going. And so whether it's the degree that holds the value, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, but finding the right people and tagging on with the right people and constantly, as you said earlier, always learning. I learn every day. He learns every day. So always learning and finding those people who you're going to learn with and keep on going on that. And the best ideas, there's the best schools. I come from a sort of a legacy of, there's the best schools. I don't know if that's the future. I honestly don't know, but try to get with the best people anyway, and try to do that and have some grace, but also if you have the opportunity, I would say two things. This goes to twofold. One is that find the best people and learn from them, but also be willing to be the one who's going to teach other people. So spend time and be able to share what you're learning with other people. That's the teamwork aspect that you have to look at. So schools that create that type of environment, I think, will probably become the best schools, or the most notable programs, or the people who deliver the best students. So,
like if I was just to inject, like myself, if I went a time machine, I was in grade 12, 11 again, what would I do? I would probably just pick one, any of them. I don't know. Go to Vancouver, go somewhere awesome, have fun. But I would make my effort to make sure that I built a team of people and just start making projects. Take every class, everything, to just start making stuff. You will find, so a little note, how do we hire people? Usually we do a lot of work and find that one person. And the interesting part is that the next hire we get, we usually just ask our own staff and say, who do you recommend? And by the way, it's all the people they went to school with. So if we find over and over, we get one Vancouver Film School grad, suddenly we have a whole art team that's Vancouver Films. Whatever the studio gets seated with first tends to be the the network. But be that student that leads the projects. Like you don't just sit there. You have to be building stuff. Use that time in that school with all the equipment, tools, resources, and teachers to build stuff, make stuff. Because as an employer, that's what I'm going to look for.
All right, I'm going to sum up. These are the three things to make yourself future-proof. You have to be kind. You have to want to work with people and be kind to yourself and work with people. You have to be curious. So follow your curiosities and go deep. Double down on your curiosities. And you have to be courageous. You have to be bold and brave. And if there is no manual, because there isn't, go find the YouTube expert, go find the expert, just do it and have fun. Because if you're not having fun, it's not worth it. So there's the summary. Any questions? Time for pizza. Let's give you guys a big Voodoo's round of applause. You guys did the tour, yeah? So you've seen the studios. So you get first to mind. Is pizza ready?